is the sudden India-UAE defense pact aimed at counterbalancing a potential Pakistan-Saudi security arrangement? Or is there a deeper strategic calculation at play? If the UAE already enjoys robust US defense backing, why seek India at all? Saswat AIMS says, what do you make out of the negotiations on the defense pact of India and the UAE? Is it in India's national interest? Because we wouldn't want our military to be engaged in other problems. Is the US pressurizing India to form a defense pact with the UAE, which is a US vassal? Would this prove to be detrimental to our sovereignty? Rishabh Tare says, recently Mr. Mohammed bin Zayed visited Delhi, the leader of the UAE, and met with Prime Minister Modi. A very brief visit, right? But he met with Prime Minister Modi. The FTA, free trade agreement, was expanded, and the new target is to make trade $200 billion by 2030 or so. Also, our Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri talked about a major defense deal, and there's news of deals of an LNG, liquefied natural gas deal, and a gold deal as well. What exactly is cooking? How do you see it as India's expanding role in the Middle East, as well as in the context of the Mohammed bin Salman versus Mohammed bin Zayed feud in Yemen and Saudi-Pakistan pact? Okay, a lot is going on, but there is talk of a India-UAE defense agreement, which is rather unusual, right? So we have excellent relations with the UAE, no question about that. Now, the question that's being asked over here primarily is under the assumption that the UAE is a US asset, a US, a US vassal. So UAE, yeah, Shashwat AIMS says UAE is a US vassal. Is it really a US vassal? The way, if you properly look at and analyze the relationships and alignments in West Asia, or the Middle East, like we call it, you will see that the UAE is more aligned with Israel than the US. The UAE's primary partner in the region, or ally, if you want to call it an ally in the region, is Israel, not the United States. Okay? Saudi Arabia, you could say, is an asset or an ally or a vassal, whatever you want to call it, of the US. But Saudi Arabia has been playing an interesting game. It's been exporting, obviously, it's a major oil exporter. So it's been exporting oil to China and taking payment in Chinese yuan, bypassing the US dollar, which is very naughty. The US won't like it. And Saudi Arabia doesn't have that great of a relationship with Israel, the kind of relationship that UAE has with Israel. So it's Saudi Arabia, US, but Saudi Arabia is also flirting with China, so to say. Okay, it's not staying completely loyal to the US. It's also playing a game with China, under the table perhaps, maybe actually not under the table, quite openly. And then you have the UAE, which is strongly aligned with Israel, and UAE is also now aligning itself with India. And Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have this mutual defense agreement, which they signed a few months ago, right? So Saudi Arabia is playing games with China, and it's taking Pakistani help to secure maybe a nuclear umbrella or something. Okay. And there's the Turkey angle as well. So it's Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and China. And Saudi Arabia has also acquired Pakistani military support. So it's Turkey, Saudi Arabia, China, Pakistan. Even though Pakistan is no longer a Chinese vassal, it's an American vassal, it's kind of a complicated game here. So Pakistan and China, they are no longer on the same page, except when it comes to India. So Saudi Arabia is essentially playing games that are, you can say are anti-India games for its own reasons. Maybe India is not the central issue when it comes to Saudi Arabia's strategic calculations, but it makes sense for them to perhaps acquire the Pakistani nuclear umbrella, which obviously, once again, Pakistani nuclear umbrella means American nuclear umbrella, actually. Okay. So because the Pakistani nukes are most likely American nukes on loan, most likely 99%. So that's the game. So on the other side, we have Israel, UAE, and India. Okay. And India and the UAE have excellent relations. I mean, if you look at the population of the UAE, it's like 60% people from the subcontinent, at least 40% from India. So 40% of the population in the UAE is Indians, not citizens, but population. So there is that. So and you know what, the UAE would very much like to be, you know, like to have, you could say, military protection from India. They would very much like to have it. I mean, I don't know what's going on in the minds of the leadership. Of course, I'm not privy to those thoughts, but it makes sense for the UAE to, instead of depending on certain nations, depend on India to a certain extent, and Israel to another extent. So that is the deal. And obviously, there is a UAE Saudi Arabia rivalry that is now kind of a little more in the open, but it's been there for a long time. So I would not really consider. See, UAE is obviously acquiring, purchasing American weapons and all, but I don't really consider the UAE to be completely a US vassal. The UAE is more aligned with Israel, and Israel is a special nation. It's not a US vassal, right? It is not. Israel is a special nation. So that is the thing. So that is the issue. That is the deal. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have a rivalry for primacy in the region. There's a rivalry that extends to regions like Yemen. It extends to the Horn of Africa, uh, maybe Sudan, maybe Somalia, definitely Somaliland, and Eritrea. All of that. There's Libya also, and that's a long story there. But there is a definite Saudi Arabia UAE rivalry. Saudi Arabia is aligning with Pakistan and Turkey, and the UAE is aligning itself with Israel and the UAE. So overall, I think it's good for India. It will not. So the question, the concern over here that I'm seeing is, will this be detrimental to India's sovereignty? Right? It will not be detrimental to India's sovereignty. See, how does sovereignty get jeopardized? Sovereignty gets jeopardized if someone else is in full or partial control of your territorial integrity of your borders, which is not the case. Or if somebody is in full or partial control of your economy, that's not the case. Or if somebody is in full or partial control of your military, which is not the case. Right? So in no way does India's sovereignty get impacted by this. Maybe we are extending some protection potentially. I don't know. It depends on what kind of deal is signed. But maybe it will mean that we will extend our protection, military protection, to the UAE, which it does not in any shape or form impact India's sovereignty, or it's not in any shape or form detrimental to India's sovereignty. So what's cooking? There's a lot that's cooking apparently. The FTA, free trade agreement between India and UAE, has been expanded. There's a more ambitious target by 2030 or so. Major defense deal potentially. I'm not sure if it's been signed or what the parameters are, but major defense deal, defense agreement, which could essentially make India and the UAE allies, which India doesn't really do. But here we have it. Looks like that. And energy deal, gold also potentially. So India's role is definitely expanding in the Middle East, and it's expanding in the context of the UAE and Israel. There's a silent actor here, which is Israel. Okay, so that's the deal.